Think about the most charming person you've ever met. They made you feel seen, understood, special, like you were the most important person in the room. And in the beginning, everything felt effortless. But somewhere along the way, something shifted. You started second-guessing yourself. You felt guilty for things you couldn't quite explain. You found yourself working harder and harder to keep the peace, while they seemed to do less and less. And the strangest part, you didn't even notice it happening. That's the thing about manipulation. It rarely looks like what you'd expect. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't come with warning labels. It hides inside charm, inside love, inside friendship. And by the time most people recognize it, they're already deep inside it. Today, we're going to change that, because the best defense against manipulation isn't suspicion, it's awareness. And awareness starts with knowing exactly what to look for. First, let's get clear on what we mean by manipulation, because the word gets misused a lot. Influence is normal. Every relationship involves influence. A friend recommends a restaurant. A partner asks you to compromise. A colleague tries to persuade you of an idea. That's human. That's healthy. Manipulation is different. Manipulation is when someone tries to influence you not through honesty, but through deception, pressure, or emotional exploitation to get what they want, regardless of the cost to you. The key difference? In healthy influence, both people can say no. In manipulation, saying no comes with a price: guilt, punishment, withdrawal of affection, or an argument that somehow always ends with you apologizing. And here's what makes it so difficult to spot. Manipulators are not always villains. Some of them are deeply insecure people who learned these patterns to survive. Some of them don't even know they're doing it. That doesn't make it okay, but it does make it harder to see clearly, especially when you care about them. Let's get into the signs. These are not about diagnosing anyone. They're about giving you language for things you may have already felt but couldn't name. Sign number 1. They make you question your own reality. You remember a conversation one way. They insist it happened differently. You feel upset about something they did. They tell you you're too sensitive, or you always overreact. Over time, you start trusting your own memory, your own feelings, your own judgment. This is called gaslighting, one of the most well-documented manipulation tactics in psychology. It's not always dramatic. It can be subtle. A slight roll of the eyes, a dismissive laugh, a quiet, "that's not what happened." But the effect is the same. You start outsourcing your sense of reality to them, and that's exactly where they want you. Sign number 2. They move fast to create a sense of debt. Manipulators are often intensely generous at first. They do big favors. They shower you with attention and gifts. They make you feel like no one has ever cared about you this much. But nothing is free. Psychologists call this love bombing, an overwhelming wave of affection designed to create emotional debt. Once you feel deeply indebted to someone, you'll work much harder to keep them happy, and they know it. If someone's generosity makes you feel vaguely uncomfortable, like you owe them more than you can repay, pay attention to that feeling. Generosity that comes with invisible strings is not really generosity. Sign number 3. They play the victim strategically. Everyone goes through hard times, and real vulnerability deserves empathy and care. But some people use victimhood as a tool. Every time you try to raise a concern or set a boundary, the conversation somehow pivots to their pain, their past, their struggles. And suddenly you're the one comforting them, even though you were the one who was hurt. The pattern looks like this. You raise an issue, they respond with a story about how much they've suffered. You leave the conversation feeling guilty for bringing it up in the first place. This is not the same as someone genuinely sharing their pain. The difference is in the timing and the effect. If their vulnerability consistently appears the moment accountability does, that's a pattern worth noticing. Sign number 4. They use silence and withdrawal as weapons. The silent treatment, disappearing without explanation, going cold when you don't do what they want. These aren't signs of someone who needs space to process. They're calculated tools of punishment, designed to make you anxious, to make you chase, and to make you give in just to restore the connection. Healthy people communicate discomfort. Manipulators weaponize silence. If you find yourself constantly walking on eggshells, afraid that one wrong word will make them disappear, you are being emotionally controlled, even if no one ever raised their voice. Sign number 5. Your confidence has slowly shrunk around them. This one is perhaps the most telling sign of all, and the hardest to see from the inside. Think back to who you were before this relationship. Were you more confident? More trusting of your own decisions? More comfortable taking up space? Manipulators erode your self-worth gradually. A small comment here, a quiet comparison there, a joke that lands just a little too close to your insecurities. Over months or years, you start to believe that you need them because somewhere along the way, you stop trusting yourself. If being around a specific person consistently makes you feel smaller, that's important data. Before we talk about what to do, I want to address something directly. If you recognized yourself in any of what we just described, please hear this. It does not mean you are weak. It does not mean you are naive. It does not mean you should have known better. Research consistently shows that manipulators tend to target people who are empathetic, conscientious, and deeply loyal. People who give others the benefit of the doubt. People who believe in working through problems rather than walking away. These are not flaws. These are some of the most admirable qualities a person can have. Manipulators simply learned how to exploit them. There's also a neurological reason this is so hard to see. When we care about someone, our brain produces oxytocin, the bonding hormone. It literally narrows our perception and makes us more willing to overlook red flags. Loving someone makes your brain want to protect the relationship, sometimes at the expense of protecting yourself. Recognizing manipulation is not about becoming suspicious of everyone. It's about learning to include yourself in the equation.
So, you've recognized the signs. Now what? First, trust the feeling, not just the facts. Manipulators are skilled at making individual incidents seem small. It was just a joke. You're reading too much into it. That only happened once, but your nervous system keeps score, even when your mind doesn't. If something consistently feels off, if you consistently leave interactions feeling drained, confused, or diminished, that pattern is real, even if you can't point to one single dramatic moment. Your body is often the first to know. Learn to listen to it. Second, test with boundaries. One of the clearest ways to identify a manipulator is to say no to something small and observe what happens. Healthy people accept boundaries, even when they're disappointed. They might feel hurt, but they respect your right to say no. Manipulators react with disproportionate anger, guilt-tripping, withdrawal, or doubling down. The intensity of their reaction to a small no tells you almost everything you need to know. Third, rebuild your external anchors. Manipulators often, intentionally or not, isolate their targets. They create distance from friends, family, or anyone who might offer a different perspective. If you're in a relationship where someone consistently feels like too much to your other people, or where your outside connections have quietly faded, start rebuilding them. Talk to people who knew you before, people who have no stake in the relationship. Let them reflect back who you are. Your sense of reality needs more than one source.
Here's the hardest truth about manipulation, and the most important one. It works best on people who are trying their hardest to be good. People who blame themselves first. People who keep asking, what can I do differently? Instead of asking, is this relationship actually safe for me? So if this video resonated with you, I want to leave you with one thing. You were never too sensitive. You were never too needy. You were never too much. You were simply responding in a very human way to a dynamic that was designed to make you feel that way. Awareness is where it ends. Once you can see the pattern clearly, it loses its power. And once you start trusting yourself again, your instincts, your memory, your feelings, no one can take that from you. Take care of yourself and share this with someone who might need to hear it today.